Hey guys, Farrock here. Okay, today I'm going to take a break from my regular tutorials about fighting PvP, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about building a PvP deck. Now, there are many options for building decks and different colors. I'm not going to go through them all. I just want to teach you the mindset that you need to have when you build a deck. Okay, so first of all, unless you are starting with Frost, you're going to want at least one Swift card in your deck. Sometimes maps are really large, and speed is very important because you want to get the power wells that are in the best positions, either the middle of the map or have a lot of, wells and orbs near them. So Swift units will help you get there faster. If your enemy has a Swift unit and you do not, he will definitely get better grounds than you, and that can put the whole match in his favor. Also, the most important thing perhaps of the entire deck building is having a counter for everything. So as you just saw, I have Scavenger, which counters small units. I have Sunstriders, which counters medium units. I have a Firesworn, which counters large units. So in Tier 1, before I even build Tier 2, no matter what comes at me, I will be prepared. If a Sunderer comes, I'll have Firesworn. If medium units, I'll have Sunstriders, and if small units come, I'll have Scavenger, or in my deck, I'll have Thugs as well. So Tier 1, the most important thing is having a counter for everything. It's also nice to have some useful spells, like I have Eruption, and I have Mine, and I have a Mortar Tower as well. But those aren't absolutely mandatory. Actually, Eruption kind of is, but Mine and Mortar are very much optional. And just the main thing you have to do is you have to make sure you don't have any open holes in your deck. For example, if I didn't have Firesworn, then Sunderers would absolutely demolish me. I wouldn't have a counter. If I didn't have Sunstriders, the enemy can make, let's say, tons of Wreckers and just destroy my base because I don't have any medium counters. For Tier 2, your mindset has to be slightly different. So again, you want to have a counter for everything. I use Ghost Spears for medium units. I have Scythe Fiends for small units. I have a Skyfire Drake for medium units. So again, you want to counter for everything. I actually have another L counter. I use Gladiatrix for large units. You want to counter for everything that comes at you as well in Tier 2. But again, they're going to be stronger because they're 2-tier cards. They use 2 orbs. Also, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have stronger spells in Tier 2. If you have some nature in your deck, you're going to want spells to heal or to trap the enemy. But there's another thing that a lot of players keep in Tier 2, and that is one really strong card that helps you take down wells or orbs really quickly. Mine is the Burrower. Doesn't look very strong, but he has Siege Attack. So he does 50% more damage versus buildings, wells or orbs. So that's going to be a lot more. That's going to be 820 plus another 410. It's going to be 1,230 damage, which for 70 power is very, very strong. And he's swift, so you can make a couple Burrowers and run them all over and attack wells with them. So in Tier 2, a lot of what you're going to be doing is trying to focus down wells. In Tier 1, mainly the fighting is going to be unit versus unit, so you want to make sure you have good unit counters. But in Tier 2, you need good unit counters, but you also want something to whack wells. Some other examples of these powerful cards would be, let's say, for fire you would use the Fire Dancer. She has a very powerful siege. She does 150% more damage against structures. Let's see what else we have. For Shadow, going. Oh yes, if you're playing Shadow Frost, you're going to want a card like Lost Reaver. He's similar to Deep One, which is the nature version. He's a large unit, but he has very good stats. So even though he doesn't have Siege, he can do a lot of damage against wells. There are other cards also. Nightcrawler. Very often when you're by a well, you'll use Frenzy to do 100% more damage, and then it does just about as much, it does exactly as much as Burrower against wells when it's on Frenzy. So, again, very good card there. And, we go on. Frost has Mountaineer. You're going to want some either big or very strong card to attack wells. So once again, in Tier 2, you want to be able to counter all units, have some nice spells, and have something that's strong against wells. Tier 3 is usually very small. In fact, my Tier 3 is only 2 cards. A lot of people like putting Giant Slayer or an XL counter in their Tier 3. You know, there's Fathom Lord or other ones, cards that are meant for extra large units, because occasionally the enemy will throw in a card like this in their Tier 3. And it's really useful to have cards that are meant to destroy extra large units. Well, another thing you need is something just like Burrower or Lost Reaver. You want something that whacks wells, but in Tier 3 you want something that does it even faster. So I use Sun Reaver. It doesn't have very good attack, but its ability makes things burn. And watch how fast this tower will go down. In fact, even if he dies now, his burning claws set things on fire, so he's very good for whacking wells. Some people just put in, tremendous Tier 3 units. So your general layout should be, you should have, enough units in Tier 1 that you can counter just about anything. And then you want, some good spells. In Tier 2, you want to be able to counter anything as well, but you also want something that's very good to knock out wells or orbs. And then in Tier 3, you want very few cards, but you want to be able to, again, have a really strong what's called nuking card, a card for taking out bases really fast, and usually an XL counter, a card to take down extra large units. Do not put Tier 4 in your deck. PvP Tier 4 is a very bad idea. The reason is because building a 4th orb costs 300 power. Remember, that's bound power. So you're going to bind 300 power to an orb and then make Tier 4 units. That's going to cost you 500-600 power. For that cost, you could make, 5 Sun Reavers, send them to all the bases, and take out all the bases. So going Tier 4 is just not worth it in PvP. Not to mention getting all those orbs is really, really tricky. So do not have Tier 4. Have very small Tier 3. Make sure your Tier 1 can withstand any attack. And make sure your Tier 2 can withstand any attack, and as well will have a card that's excellent against wells and orbs. Alright, I might do one more deck building video where I actually show you a bunch of different PvP decks that I have. But for now, you should keep that stuff in mind. Now, if you're a relatively new player and you don't have a lot of Battleforge points, my advice to you is do not make pure decks. Now, let me show you why. Here's a pure fire deck. You're going to need Giant Slayers, which are expensive. You're going to need Juggernaut, which is very expensive. You're going to need Fire Dancers, which are even more expensive. And if you want Sunderer, you definitely need Firesworn. These cards are rare and ultra rare cards. They're a ton of Battleforge points. And if you're short on Battleforge points, do not make a pure fire deck. But similarly, Shadow, you're going to have Harvester, which is ultra rare and extremely expensive. You're going to have Shadow Mage, which is very expensive. You're also going to spend a lot of money on pure Shadow decks. Now, there are some decks that are not that expensive. Pure Nature, it's actually the Tier 1 that's very expensive. But Pure Nature is also expensive, and Pure Frost as well. So I recommend, if you don't have a lot of Battleforge points, to build decks that are splash decks. For example, here's a Stonekin deck. So Ice Guardian is expensive. But still, once you get your Tier 1 down pat, the cards are pretty much all common cards or uncommon, and they're very cheap. Stone Tempest costs nothing. Razor Shard is very cheap. Stone Shards are common cards. They're extremely cheap. And Lyrish Knight is also very, very cheap. All these cards are very cheap cards. Some of the spells are a little expensive, but still. So Stonekin would be a relatively good deck if you don't have Battleforge. The one that I use, where was that again? I have way too many decks. Here, my Fire Nature deck. All relatively cheap cards. And, some are a little expensive, but you don't even need them. And, for example, instead of Burrower, technically you could use Vile Bloods, but still Burrower is pretty cheap. Skyfire Drake is pretty cheap. Sun Reaver is very cheap. So all the important cards are cheap. So again, if you don't have a lot of Battleforge points, go with the cheap mixed deck, and just keep everything that I said before in mind. Alright, see you in the next video.